Welcome to this explainer. We've all been there, right? The scratchy throat, the endless sniffles, that heavy head feeling, just absolute exhaustion. The common cold is this universal misery that pretty much unites the entire globe. Yet, surprisingly, it remains one of the most misunderstood ailments out there. So today, we're going to go on a journey to really demystify this everyday enemy and look at the actual fascinating science of what is going on inside your body.
Now, you might think of a cold as just a single, sneaky bug that catches you when your guard is down. But get this, over 200. The common cold isn't just one illness. It's actually a massive umbrella term for over 200 different microscopic invaders, all literally competing to turn your respiratory system into their own personal breeding ground.
Part 1. The common cold culprits. So historically, doctors and scientists have actually grouped these upper respiratory pathogens by their distinct biological characteristics. As they figured out decades ago, these specific viruses invade your normal mucous membranes, and they typically stick around for a short-term carriage of less than 2 weeks. But, as we'll see in a second, these microscopic villains are definitely not all the same.
Let's break down the major players here. Rhinoviruses, they are the top offenders by far, causing anywhere from 10 to 40% of all colds, and they're most active in the fall and spring. Then you've got coronaviruses, which tend to strike more in the winter and spring months. We also see RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, which is so incredibly common that most kids will actually catch it by the time they turn 2. And finally, human parainfluenza viruses, specifically types 1 and 2, which are frequent cold makers as well. They all have their own distinct seasons, their own targets.
Section 2. How the virus spreads.
Okay, so how do they actually get to you? Well, the complex physics of airborne transmission basically happen in 3 distinct phases. It kicks off with generation and exhalation from a sick person's airway, then moves through transport, literally floating across a room, and ends with inhalation right into your nasal cavity. It's not just a simple sneeze. It's a highly dynamic cloud of microscopic aerosol particles riding the airflow, just looking for a new host. The absolute crucial point here is that you really do not need to be coughed on to get sick. In fact, continuous talking and just normal breathing actually release way more total virus-laden aerosols into the air than sporadic coughing does. Kind of wild, right? Interestingly, kids produce fewer of these infectious aerosols than adults, simply because their little lungs are still developing and have fewer bronchioles. But for an adult, just 1 minute of speaking can pump out at least 1,000 aerosols. So yeah, it's the everyday, invisible interactions that really drive the spread.
Art 3. The science of the cough.
So once those inhaled aerosols actually land in your respiratory tract, your body reacts. And the undisputed star of this reaction is the vagus nerve. You can think of the vagus nerve as this overly sensitive fire alarm installed right inside your throat and chest. Its main biological job is to protect your airways and lungs from harmful stuff. The second it senses an irritation or a foreign invader, it triggers the coughing reflex to aggressively kick the intruder out.
Here's exactly how this defensive battle plays out. Step 1, the virus invades your airway. Step 2, in response, your damaged cells release high levels of pro-inflammatory molecules. One key player here is bradykinin, which, by the way, is also the main culprit behind that nasty sore throat you get. Step 3, these inflammatory molecules severely irritate that vagus nerve we just talked about. And finally, step 4, boom, you're having coughing fits. It is literally a defensive battle playing out in real time inside your chest.
Section 4. Why winter makes us sick.
So why does this whole ordeal seem to happen so much more often during the winter? Well, the myth we've all been told since childhood is that cold weather itself directly causes you to catch a cold. But the actual, fascinating reality is that lower environmental temperatures literally blunt the immune defenses inside your nasal cavity. The cold doesn't magically create the virus out of thin air. It just disarms your frontline security so the virus can basically just waltz right past.
Let's look at the numbers. Your core body temperature sits at a nice, warm 37 degrees Celsius. But because your nose sticks out from your face and is constantly exposed to that freezing winter air, its internal temperature drops down to around 33 degrees. And as it turns out, 33 degrees is the absolute perfect breeding ground for rhinoviruses. They replicate so much more efficiently at this cooler temperature, actively exploiting that chilled, weakened environment inside your nose.
Section 5. Myth-busting and effective treatments.
Okay, let's dive into some rapid-fire myth-busting about how we actually treat and prevent these things. First up, will going out with wet hair give you a cold? You've heard it a million times, right? It's one of the most stubborn health myths out there.
But the simple, undeniable truth is this. Your hair might freeze into literal icicles. But without direct exposure to one of those 200 viruses, you are not going to get sick. Viruses cause colds, not wet hair. It's really just a classic case of correlation. We spend a lot more time indoors during cold weather, hanging out in crowded spaces where viruses spread super easily, and then we go ahead and blame the damp hair instead of the indoor air.
All right, here's another massive misconception. We literally see entire pharmacy aisles dedicated to this one idea. Can popping vitamin C supplements act as some sort of impenetrable preventative shield against the common cold?
The science says no. While vitamin C is fantastic for your overall immune support, and it might slightly speed up your recovery time once you're already ill, it absolutely cannot stop the virus from infecting you in the first place. You just can't out-supplement direct aerosol exposure to a highly contagious rhinovirus.
So the crucial takeaway for treatment is to stick to actual medical science. First off, absolutely do not take antibiotics. Colds are viral, and antibiotics only kill bacteria, so they won't do a thing. Also, try not to use nasal decongestants for more than 3 to 5 days, or you're going to trigger this awful rebound congestion that just makes you feel way worse. Instead, your best defense is prioritizing sleep, getting at least 7 to 8 hours to protect your immunity. And definitely use an indoor humidifier. Adding moisture to that super dry winter air really helps loosen up stubborn mucus.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to ask yourself this. The next time you feel a winter chill, and that inevitable familiar tickle starts up in the back of your throat, which of those 200 invisible invaders are you actually up against? Is it a rhinovirus aggressively multiplying in a chilly 33-degree nasal cavity? Or maybe an aerosolized coronavirus that just floated across a crowded room from someone breathing normally? The common cold might just seem like an everyday nuisance, but the microscopic battle happening inside your body is nothing short of extraordinary. Definitely keep that in mind the next time you reach for the tissues.